Welcome to the Unnamed Cybersecurity Podcast. I am Chris. I have Matt, and I have Bob here today, but Carl is AWOL. There's a rumor on the internet that he's been kidnapped. Now, I started the rumor, so
it's on
he
the
may or may
internet
not
now.
be kidnapped.
You just
It's on the
saw
internet
it
now.
hit
Yeah,
the internet.
exactly.
That
On
was
the internet now.
Breaking news right now, Carl's been kidnapped, and silver alert going out soon. Just kidding. We don't know where Carl is. We run businesses, stuff happens, right? So he's probably busy. But we have an
Someone's
exciting
missing.
show. What?
And it's not me.
Yeah. We have an exciting show, though, today. We are going to talk about the little Microsoft hack that happened last year that we covered a little bit. But there's been some breaking news on this, some updated information. CISA got involved from the federal government, and they put out a pretty scathing report on Microsoft's practices and saying how that Microsoft Exchange intrusion, if you want to call it that, should never happened. And it kind of highlights some of the problems we have in general with cloud. Not that cloud is bad, but just like some of the things that we need to be aware of in cloud, and just how many things can happen. And sometimes, you know what, it's like winning the lottery. And in this case, it seems really like the threat actors won the lottery and were able to compromise certain accounts they shouldn't have in the UK and in the United States. So,
When was that breach, Chris?
That was last June. Well, it was noticed in last June. It started in last May. So May 2023, the State Department actually let Microsoft know in June of 2023 that they had detected some nefarious activities, and they asked questions to Microsoft. And Microsoft was like, well, that's interesting. And they got involved. So that was June 15th, 2023 is when the Security Operations Center for the State Department, the U.S. State Department, they detected some mail access through some alerts that they had customized. So what they did, they had bought additional logging from Microsoft that most people don't have access to. It's super expensive, but it's good that they had it because they created these custom alerts. And in this case, they called it the Big Yellow Taxi. It's probably not really called that. That's probably just the name they used, but they detected this email access that shouldn't have been happening, and they let Microsoft know on June 16th. And by June 21st, Microsoft, they had already initiated the response efforts on June 16th, and by June 21st, the FBI was notified of the intrusion. And boy, did it accelerate from there. Whew.
But wait, more.
Yeah. So Microsoft finally, it took them until June 24th to realize what actually gave access to these email boxes. So in this case, it was a consumer signing key. So for like Outlook.com, right? Or for like OneDrive for personal, something that should never work in the business atmosphere. Well, customers had asked for some interoperability for OpenID, and Microsoft allowed it, but then it turns out a bug allowed that signing key to be used on the enterprise side, on the business side that we all use. And yeah, that caused a problem. So turn this up a little bit. It took them an additional 8 days to finally stop it from being able to be exploited from the time that they were notified, actually 9 days. And they started notifying customers on July 4th. So because that signing key had been used, they were able to go through and see all the nefarious activities and figure out which accounts have been compromised, which email boxes. I mean, it was like the Secretary of Commerce for the United States, obviously the State Department. There's some other key figures and key departments that were compromised. They released a blog post in July 10th. And they updated it on September 6th, and they claim that this was all tied to some crash dumps that had the key in them, and somehow the Storm 558 got the key and used it. Turns out that was kind of a lie. That actually probably didn't happen because they don't have logs. So this should be a movie. Honestly, it'd probably be a boring movie, but it'll
hit Netflix eventually, just like
yeah.
and they'll
make it all like they'll make it like action packed and stuff like that. They'll have people like doing like ninja fights and stuff and like fighting scenes, and we're like, dude, what?
It'll have dark voiceovers. And
yeah,
deep voices.
So Chris, this was a signing key, and most people on this call listening to this probably don't have a clue what you're talking about. And the signing keys are digital signatures.
Yeah, it's a digital signature. But think about it. It's just a way to authenticate something, right? So let's say you have the key, you can be authenticated. And in this case, what it was used for is to forge authentication tokens into Microsoft email. So they got access to mailboxes they shouldn't have got access to. The worst part is this is a 2016 signing key. Signing keys should be rotated. And Microsoft did rotate them until 2021. However, somebody forgot to revoke the 2016 key. So when you start piecing this all together, when you start reading the reports, you start looking through like the summary, you're like, how did all this happen? So Storm 558 had to have access to Microsoft systems. They had to get a signing key from 2016 that somehow just wasn't invalidated by the company. Then they had to rely on a bug that allowed them to create these tokens into email boxes on the business side. And the worst part about this is practically nobody had logs that would have showed like a security operations center or anybody that this was actually happening. We're actually lucky that the State Department paid for those additional logs and had their own custom alerts to even detect this.
So there's really Microsoft a stroke of luck in it even being detected.
Yeah.
That's the scary part for me.
Yeah. So this is wild, but then like the stuff coming back saying like the blog post they put was like inaccurate. And Microsoft knew about that about a month after they posted the blog post. They talked to their own board and knew it was inaccurate. And they just never corrected it until March. Now, March 12th, actually, they corrected it. Here's the thing about this whole situation. Should it have happened? Absolutely not. Will this lead to probably better changes in the future? Yes. We all got access to the same logs that the State Department got because of this. Not that that's a consolation prize. Should have had them in the first place.
It's fun reading for Chris.
Yeah, we should have had them in the first place. And in this case, they're doing the right thing and opening up those logs and making them available. So.
But it goes further. They apparently failed to detect that an employee's laptop was compromised in 2021. So when they made all this, they said that maybe the initial access was from 2021. They bought a company and then they said they looked at the machine, but then they gave the guy access into Microsoft Corporate, and that's how they think happened. They can't prove it because they don't have logs that are that old, which brings up another question. How long do you guys keep logs? Like, it's expensive to keep logs. So, yeah. So it's expensive to keep logs depending on, like, what regulatory compliance, right? Like, if you have to keep logs for, like, 7 years or 1 year or whatever. Our default's only 90 days. I probably shouldn't say that. Actually, our default's 20 years. Yeah, that's it. But keeping logs is prohibitively expensive, especially for smaller companies, right? So we have to make a determination on the risk for the company, like how long we keep the logs. Microsoft obviously be keeping the logs longer than like our customers or even us, because they have a little bit more to lose, especially when they're supporting a lot of the internet for certain things. But it's expensive, and not every company can do that. I think some positives out of this. I mean, what do you guys think about this? Like, did you guys read the recommendations, right, for like standardizing the stuff on the cloud? And kind of go through that.
Yep.
Yeah. This report by CISA really. Yeah, they recommend certain security practices and audit logging norms and stuff like that be standards, and 100% agree. Everybody should have the same standard, whether you're Google or Amazon or Microsoft. Like, we should all have the same standards so that we can detect this stuff a lot quicker across cloud.
Right. So there's a whole bunch of standards. There's a whole bunch of stuff. And Chris, you mentioned that that Microsoft's making additional logging available to people. But is it actually turned on and enabled on these people, or is this something that we have to go do?
I don't know the answer to that, but I'm going to assume if it's like anything else in Microsoft land, it's not enabled by default. Because history tells us that when Microsoft enables something, they do not go back and retroactively enable it for a majority of their tenants, unless it's multi-factor authentication, which is being forced on everybody. But
you're kind of grandfathered in on some settings, but I mean, we've all seen sometimes settings change.
It is something that needs to be looked at across the board on the tenants, and even new Office 365 environments that are set up today, they don't have everything secured the way it should be. So just turning it on is not enough.
And going beyond that though, like even if you have the logs, are you actually doing anything with them? Are you pushing them
giving them to the forensic incident response team to figure out what happened?
Yeah, I mean, if you go back to the whole thing that there's two types of people in this world: the people that have been hacked, and the people that have been hacked and don't know about it. Right. So if you have logs, that's great, but like if you're not actually doing anything with them, and they are going to roll over at some point, whether it's 90 days or a year in Microsoft land, like you still need to be able to do something with it. So having logs is great, but like you have to take action with those logs. So post-incident response is great. Hey, we got hacked. Here's the logs. Oh, hey, we figured out how it happened. But like, what about all the fallout from that incident? I mean, that could be huge.
Yep.
So, standardizing things is great. I love that aspect of this. I think there does need to be security standards and frameworks for cloud providers in general. I think that, and we're talking about the big players. What about the ones that nobody talks about, right? Like QuickBooks. Can't get logs from QuickBooks. What about all the other cloud apps that our customers use or whatever? Is the same logging available for them? Do we even know when one of our customers in some of their software as a service apps have been compromised? We're relying on third parties for this. So I think this should be a big push in general for just software as a service. Let's push for this. Let's push for standards that we can all pull in and we can actually make actionable decisions, based on these logs, and not always leave it up to the third parties. That's my soapbox.
Yeah, I saw one of our vendors was actually putting a petition together, trying to get people to sign off to take it to QuickBooks to actually try and open up the logs.
Yeah.
Well, QuickBooks. Not that I want to get a soapbox against the company. I use QuickBooks, but they've always been a little.
All right, let's have Matt do your yeah.
Oh, it's going to be a quick soapbox. QuickBooks, we know from a security standpoint, it's always been a little bit difficult. I mean, back to the desktop days, administrative rights required on every machine just for it to function right. So it's kind of just continued. I'm not saying it's a bad product, but it's always been hard to run in a way that anyone feels safe from a security standpoint.
Oh, I got a soapbox for this one. Good news is you don't have to be an admin to run it, but you have to be an admin to update it, which creates a whole other situation.
So few are using desktop now anyway. Double-edged sword, I suppose. Now that it's all hosted. But sorry, Bob, didn't mean to step on your whatever's coming in. Ant. Your turn. Your soapbox.
No, it's all good. It's all good. I see you.
No, I was just pointing to you. You can make your case.
Well, actually, on my screen, you were pointing to Matt.
Oh, that's not good. On my screen,
I was really confused. I was like, you're pointing.
All right, I'm never pointing again, guys.
Pointing to Chris.
I'm done. Bob.
Anyway, we're losing this. We're losing this real quick. And the big thing I have here is there was a breach at Microsoft, but the good thing that came out of this breach is they're making logs available that really will help people move forward. And the fact that if we can get a standard across multiple of various SaaS vendors, that would be great. But at least on the Microsoft platform, we've got better visibility to what's there.
Yeah, I asked this question, and this is probably a good question for anybody to ask their customer, or even if you're listening to this and just an internal question. Let's say you use a third party. Doesn't matter. Let's take Microsoft. We talked about Intuit a little bit. But let's say you use a third party, and that piece of software is hosted or whatever, and your business runs based on that piece of software. So maybe it's required for your business to operate. Have you ever asked them the question what they're doing to protect your data? What is their plan if they have an incident? What do they have a way to detect when like an account from you has been compromised and maybe it's trying to exfiltrate data? I asked this to an insurance agent. I got a blank stare for a second, and then the response was, I've never even thought about asking that. It's okay to ask questions. It's okay to ask your vendors for proof. It's okay to ask them for that. They should be providing it, but sometimes people aren't just going to openly offer you that information. But ask the question. It's your right to ask the question. It's your data. You're ultimately responsible for it. If it gets leaked and you have to get hit with like some sort of regulatory compliance or whatever, it's your responsibility. Ask the question. And on that note, don't jump ship from Microsoft. They're going to make changes. This as much as a scathing review, sometimes things that are scathing make people do generational jumps in their security program. It's going to happen. The same group has hit Google before, so it's something that we have to take in context. We have to make good decisions on. Do you have anything else, Matt? Any wins this week? Anything good? Yeah.
I'll just say word agreed. Hopefully there's more of a focus on security versus new features for a little while. There's a little catch up needed sometimes.
You need a degree to keep up with the feature changes.
Oh my Lord. Seriously.
Dedicated
That's job right there.
Yeah, there you go. Anything from you, Bob?
Yeah, the only thing, if you, on the same lines, backups are so critical for everything that's gone on. Don't assume your IT guys are backing everything up unless you can validate it. I got a call on Friday from somebody who had a NAS in his office and they thought his IT guy was backing it up. Well, they aren't. And now we're trying data recovery for several terabytes of data. So hopefully we can get that data back for this guy. And really look at what people are doing. If you're getting an invoice for it, make sure they're actually doing the work.
Let's cover that for a second. If you've never done data recovery on a hard drive or a system before, you have no idea how much it costs. Take whatever number you have in your head, multiply it by 10, maybe 20, maybe 30, maybe 40, and that's probably what the number will be. And if you think the number is less than $5,000, you're going to be wrong for the most part.
And if it's a large data, in this case, it's 4 drives from 2011 in a network access platform that isn't even produced anymore.
Out of 0.
All right, let's go. Yeah, you're talking thousands of dollars, whereas the backup for this might only cost you, maybe tons. But whereas
that's if recoverable. I mean, that's something some people understand. This is a maybe.
Yeah. Whereas backup, though, like in that same time frame, is maybe hundreds of dollars, maybe into the low, maybe it's a 4-figure backup, but it also gives you that peace of mind. So you get that peace of mind, and it really isn't that hard to prove that backups are happening. One thing you got to be careful of too, and we talked about this a little bit, is make sure you can recover from a backup. It's great that backups are telling you they're successful over and over again. That's great, but make sure that the data is actually legit. Like, restore some data and make sure it's actually working, especially if it's critical for like your business.
Another one is what's the acceptable downtime if you have to restore? How long would a full restore take if you need it? If you can live with a restore taking a week, awesome. But if you need it in an hour, that's a whole different scenario. So
expectations are important. Yeah, to Matt's point, typically 4 to 5 times the amount of time to back up is what it takes to restore. So if it takes you 8 hours to back up your systems, there's a good chance it's going to take 40 hours to restore it. So think about that.
And on that same note, make sure you got it someplace else that the bad guys can't get to it.
Yeah,
that's a totally another conversation.
So real quick,
Again,
offsite's great. Yeah, well, hey, I'll just keep going all day.
Like a quick question, quick rant.
Offsite is great as long as you can protect it from being accessed. If it's offsite, you want to really make sure that it's not something that somebody can just randomly delete. There needs to be checks and balances to it. We've talked about that before. there are ways to make it immutable so that somebody can't just delete it, and it has to go through like let's say it has to go 90 days. Let's say all your backups are immutable for 90 days. That means you can read from them, but you can't delete them. And at 90 days, they'll be deleted automatically. So immutable storage is really important offsite. That lawsuit we talked about last week with the lawyer, again, they backed up it. They had the stuff backed up, but apparently they just didn't protect the accounts. They got their backups deleted. So we've covered Microsoft being hacked. We have backups. We're officially in second quarter, right? So let's get excited. Summer's around the corner, maybe. For some of us, we all live kind of north, so maybe. Operation Find Carl before next week. Sound good?
Yep.
All right.
Sounds good.
So we'll try to get Carl back next week.
Okay, guys, let's wrap it up. Let's wrap it up.
Questions, comments?
Keep people safe, and if anyone has anything that they would like us to talk about, comment where you're viewing this, and if you want to be a guest on it, we'd love to bring somebody else on to talk about how they're helping. How they help the environment, help the community from a cyber perspective, or even have a different perspective for cyber.
Yeah, and if you want to wear one of those fancy like eyeglasses and mustaches and stuff to hide your identity, we're done with that too. So
and our public safety notice for the next week: don't look at the sun, please, without the right protection.
I had a side conversation with one of my friends about his kid. They sent this home from the school trying to tell them to talk to their kids about not staring directly at solar eclipse without proper eye protection. Words to live by, guys.